called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, describing how seekers experience darkness and pain after some blissful awakening experiences. Can you please talk about doing the laundry?
I thought you were going to ask me about doing ecstasy, but... The laundry. Well, it's just a terminology for doing the work to prepare for enlightenment, really. You get a spiritual experience that can be like ecstasy or bliss, or you just find yourself as expanded reality without an I. And then you come back to the ego-based reality that you've been living as your whole life, and you realise you'd want more of what you found. But the problem with that is the way you've been programmed, you're not programmed to support what you found. You've been programmed to protect yourself, to defend yourself, to operate out of closure, to survive in the material world. And that does not support higher consciousness. It supports lower consciousness very well. It supports survival very well, but it does not support higher consciousness. So the laundry is doing the work to remove all the obstacles that close you, so you can walk through life vulnerable and open, in a state of surrender. That's the work. That's the laundry. And then there's the ecstasy again.
Being in your presence, I feel a lot of bliss. And sometimes after leaving your presence, I notice darkness and pain arising. I resist it by distracting myself. How do you deal with the darkness that's within you?
Acceptance. Once again, it always really comes back to that, and it's the very thing that we're not good at, acceptance. We're good at resistance, we're good at coping mechanisms, we're good at diverting our attention elsewhere, but we're not good at acceptance. Acceptance really means non-doing, which is another word for surrender. And in surrender, everything's just there, but because we're not resisting, we're not suffering. And because we're not resisting, we're not holding it in any longer. So anything that is inside of us in the way of wounding can start to be healed, because it can come out. People keep prisoners inside themselves. They keep their pain body locked inside of themselves with a myriad of coping mechanisms not to feel it. When we become willing to feel what's inside of us, we can start to heal what is inside of us. But that demands openness. And it also demands that we are willing to meet pain, because usually it's uncomfortable. It's not pleasant. We've stored up a whole pile of things that we didn't want to feel at the time, and unfortunately they're still there. In the willingness to be with it, in the willingness to not resist, we can heal it. It's lovely. But it's up to you. The rest of the world is going to resist. Use coping mechanisms. All your friends, probably your family. That's the way it is. That's the way the world is. But if you're interested in higher consciousness, that doesn't actually work. What works is openness. What works is non-resistance. If you're into the way of the heart, non-resistance is the path. But if you're into enlightenment, non-resistance is also the path. It's up to you. This is your life. You have these choices that you can make.
You've spoken about how seekers go through the dark night of the soul. How long does the dark night of the soul last?
About as long as a piece of string. How many lifetimes? You don't have to go... Okay, so people think, well, you have to completely heal and go through the dark night of the soul and get everything sorted out before you wake up. That's not necessarily true. If you can surrender unconditionally and stay surrendered, you can wake up and stay awake. What stops people from staying awake is the resistance to life, because awareness comes away from itself and back onto the resistance. After a certain point of awakening, awareness just stays on itself. It's like it's locked on, like it's magnetized. But in the early stages of awakening, it's quite fragile. Awareness drifts back and forward from itself onto the ego again, or the mind again, particularly if the mind is in resistance. And so if you're not resisting, if you're open, if you're surrendered, you are supporting awakening. You are supporting truth inside yourself. You are also supporting the way of the heart inside of yourself. Openness, in my book, counts for everything.